Good.
All right, hello, friends. I'm here today with Leonida. He is a remarkable young man with John Moore Associates, and John Moore Associates is, let me get the official word here, an investment advisor registered with the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission. So, Cole, I know a little bit about JMA. It's a great company, but can you just tell our viewers and listeners who is JMA? Who's John Moore Associates?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Joanna, and thanks so much for having us here today. I sincerely appreciate the opportunity to speak with the Phoenix Dream Center and their givers. So John Moore Associates, or JMA, we are an independent, faith-based financial planning firm. We also do investment management, and we have offices in Albuquerque, New Mexico, as well as here in Scottsdale. Something that's unique about us, Joanna, is that we function as an ensemble, meaning our entire team of 13 professionals is at the service of all of our clients all the time. We have been around for over 25 years, and it is our mission to walk alongside the families we serve, helping them become wise and generous stewards. With that mission in mind, through our financial planning process, we provide guidance and strategy on everything from estate planning to tax strategy to, of course, investments and things like insurance. But our favorite topic by far is generosity and helping our families make the greatest impact with their wealth by becoming wise givers.
Wise giver. So wise means being smart, and giving has to do with generosity. But what does it mean to be a wise giver? I know that's a strategy with JMA.
Yeah, so wise giving is really an intentional process that helps families create what we would call a giving strategy. And we don't think a financial plan is complete without a giving strategy. So there's a couple of ways that we can help folks remember this. And we have the 4 T's and the 3 P's of wise giving. So we'll start with the 4 T's. The first three are probably going to look very familiar to many. So you can give with your time, your talent, and your treasure, but you can also give thanks. First Thessalonians tells us that we should be joyful always, praying continually, give thanks in all circumstances, for this is God's will for you in Christ Jesus. I hope everyone caught that God's will for us is to give thanks in all circumstances. So it's so important for folks to realize that generosity is more than just financial giving. Now, of course, today we're going to be focusing on financial giving, and that's where some of the 3 P's come into play. The first one is prayer. We believe that God owns it all, and every financial decision is also a spiritual decision. So where to be generous with the resources that we're entrusted with is something that we should be thoughtful and very prayerful about before we make any decisions. The next P is planning. Once we have an idea of where we want to give and potentially how much we feel led to give, we need to do some planning. And this is where we get to geek out over here, Joanna. We dive into tax returns, discuss different charitable vehicles, consider assets that could be gifted. We start thinking long term on how to make this most tax efficient, cost effective, and impactful for the nonprofit that's going to be benefiting from this gift. And then the next P, the last P, is practice. We have to put that plan into practice. This is an intentional word choice here, Joanna, not just because we're trying to be like pastors with the alliteration, but because we can do great planning and have great ideas, but until we actually execute the gift, we have not felt the impact or experienced the joy of giving. We've also not created any kind of habit of giving. So when we practice, we get better. And we found that generosity is a journey. So when we successfully implement a gift, and then another, and then another, we find that families have a tendency to grow in their generosity. The intentionality, the frequency, and the magnitude of their giving all have a tendency to grow. And that's really, really exciting for us.
Wow, that's great. That's great. So, as far as giving, like, why is it really so important?
Joanna, we live in Phoenix or Scottsdale. I work in Scottsdale. Wealth is all around us,
Yes.
right? And where there's wealth, there's greed. And
Yeah.
greed can be contagious, and it's certainly toxic. I think we've all felt that before. But generosity is the antidote to greed. The two cannot coexist at the same time. So we feel that the generosity movement in the Valley is really on the front lines of that battle between good and evil, is maybe as exaggerated as that might sound.
Yeah, I get that. So, okay, so my husband and I have prayed. We've decided we want to give to, above our tithes to our church. We want to give more. Why can't we just write a check or put it on a credit card or give cash?
Yeah, so you certainly can give cash. There's no reason that you couldn't give cash, but you probably shouldn't. We have a saying here: never write another check. Our friends at National Christian Foundation, that I'm kind of teasing, a little plug for them later on. They like to say, "Friends don't let friends give cash." I love that, and of course, it's an overgeneralization. Sometimes cash can be the absolute right thing to give. But what I want to do in the next 15 or so minutes is walk through 4 giving strategies that everyone watching should consider when they're supporting their favorite nonprofit, of course, in this case, the Phoenix Dream Center. These are not the only strategies out there. I want to have a little caveat that there are other ways that you can give, but these are the most frequently utilized and some of the simplest and easiest to implement. So those 4 strategies, number 1 is cash. Joanna, I've called you out before. You said, hey, I sponsored this with a check. And I go, Joanna, I kind of wagged my finger at you. Cash is number 1, easy, simple, and oftentimes the right one. Number 2, appreciated assets. This is kind of the next level of giving. This is where we get to kind of advance our giving. The third can be done with cash or assets, and this is bunching. This is kind of an even next level strategy. And then the fourth is qualified charitable distributions, by far the most tax efficient way of the 4, but only a select few people can do it. So we'll dive into each one of those individually.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, so if you stay until the end, we do have a bonus strategy, which will be fun. I kind of already alluded to that. If you know who National Christian Foundation is, you already know the bonus strategy, but don't tell your friends, just watch till the end. So we'll start with cash. So cash is our first one because it's the most basic and the easiest, and I want to discuss when should we give cash. There's limited uses for cash because giving only benefits the giver's tax situation if they have enough to itemize their deductions. Now, to be clear, before we go any further, giving is not about the tax deduction. Giving should always be done from a place of generosity. The desire should be to support a cause, not just for the tax benefits. But let's take a look at an example of when that might work here in a minute. So the Arizona tax credits would be a fantastic place to give cash. And in fact, you can only give cash to Arizona tax credits. Another time when you would give is when you don't have any appreciated assets to give. We'll discuss why that's so valuable, why the appreciated assets are where we look first. Or in instances where only cash is accepted. So you may be at a fundraiser or an event or something where it has to be cash. Of course, give the cash. Go ahead and give when you feel called to give. So for those of you that are not familiar with the Arizona tax credit, I want to just explain this at kind of a high level. What it does is it allows you to reallocate your tax dollars that you would have owed to the state of Arizona to causes that matter to you. This is just a wonderful way, and it has to be cash. You can't do this with assets. You can make these contributions up until tax day, and you can use this as a dollar for dollar credit towards your state tax bill. So, Joanna, I know this is no secret to you guys. This is a push you make every year, but this is our favorite reason to give cash is the Arizona tax credits.
That's great.
Yeah. The next one on the list is giving of appreciated assets. Like I said, this is kind of next level giving. This is when you have an asset that you've held for at least a year, and it's worth more now than it was when you purchased it. There's a whole bunch of things that you can give, but some examples of items that you could give: public stock or mutual funds, ETFs or bonds if they're appreciated, privately held business interests. If you are a small business owner and you have a charitable heart, you can give a portion or all of your business, depending on how generous you're feeling. Real estate, if you own a rental property or a condo or something along those lines, or even just raw land, you can give all or a portion of that. Life insurance policies, if you have tangible assets like art, jewelry, cars, things like that, if those are appreciated, you can give those. And you can actually benefit from giving depreciated tangible assets, but I'm gonna stick with the appreciated ones because these I think are the most impactful. Okay, so the real benefits here is if you give any of those appreciated assets, you get to avoid capital gains, and you also get to earn that deduction if you're itemizing. Okay, so you kind of get a 2-for-1, whereas cash, you might get to itemize, and that could be the only tax benefit. When you give away appreciated assets, you get to avoid capital gains that you would have had to use or realize when you sold a position. And you also get the opportunity to itemize the deduction. So let's just take a look at how that works. So say you purchased a stock 2 years ago for $100. We'll call it ABC Tech stock. You purchased it 2 years ago for $100. You've got a 50% gain in that. That stock you own is now worth $150. So you have $100 of basis, which you paid for it, and you've got $50 of capital gains. Okay, so that's the setup here. If you were to sell that position, you would owe capital gains on that $50 of gain. That could be anywhere between 0 and 20% on the federal level. If you're a really high earner, you could owe something called net investment income tax, a federal surcharge on top of that, which would be 3.8%. And you could also owe state tax, depending on which state you reside in. So we're looking at a pretty substantial tax bill. I'm going to kind of show you how the math works here, Joanna. I know you're a numbers person just like I am. So let's just see how this works. Say you had a very generous giver that wanted to give $100,000 to the Dream Center, okay? They said, hey, I've got $100,000 of ABC Tech stock, fill in the blank on your high-flying stock. I'm going to sell my stock, and I'm going to give the Dream Center that $100,000 of stock. Well, the way that would work out for the giver, current value $100,000. They thought, oh, I could give that stock away. I heard Cole talk about that on the webinar. Well, they only paid $50,000 for that stock 10 years ago. It's doubled since then. They feel great about it. So their cost basis is 50, currently worth 100,000. That means they have $50,000 of capital gains. So at its very lowest level, they would have at least call it a 15% tax liability just on the federal level. That's where most capital gains get taxed. So that'd be a $7,500 tax liability on their capital gains, meaning if they were to just use the proceeds of that sale, they'd only have $92,500 to give to the Dream Center. Now, if they wanted to make it a round six-figure gift, a $100,000 gift, this $100,000 gift would actually cost them $107,500 if they wanted to pay the tax bill and also do the donation. Okay, is that making sense? I want to make sure I'm explaining that okay, Joanna?
And that just doesn't look like fun.
Yeah, so there's a better way. There's a better way. That's why we're talking about this today. And this is a really simple and easy strategy. And I know you guys have accepted gifts like this before. You're able to accept stock gifts. So if someone came to you and said, I want to give my ABC Tech stock, you'd say, you should do it before you sell it. Just give us the stock. Let's see how that would work out. Current value, $100,000. You paid $50,000 for it 10 years ago, so you've got $50,000 of gains. Well, there isn't actually a tax liability there. That 15% is actually a 0% tax liability, so there'd be no capital gains tax on this, meaning you get to give the entire $100,000 value to the Dream Center, and then there's no tax liability back in. So it's just a much more tax efficient way to do that. And another advanced approach here is if someone has $100,000 of cash sitting on the sideline, they say, Joanna, I want to give you $100,000. I've got cash. Your first question should be, do you have any appreciated assets? They would say, oh yeah, I've got ABC Tech stock. It's worth $100,000. Here's the super advanced strategy. Give you the stock and then take their $100,000 of cash that they would have given you and go repurchase the stock. They now bought that stock at a higher cost basis, so they don't have to worry about the capital gains, and they still own the stock. You don't have to wait. You could do it the same day. It doesn't matter. So there's some really cool things you can do, but the key takeaway here with the appreciated assets is give it before you sell it.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, so when would we want to give those appreciated assets? If you have highly concentrated positions, we've got folks, they've owned, Microsoft stock or some mutual fund for 30 years, and it's got a cost basis that is exceptionally low, or it's appreciated a whole bunch. So highly concentrated, low basis, highly appreciated. Or if there's a liquidity event coming up, this is a big one that if you're a business owner or you're thinking about selling some real estate and you have a generous heart, talk about giving first. Before you enter into an agreement to sell something, talk about giving it first. And a great way to do that is to utilize a donor advised fund. So our partners at National Christian Foundation, and to be clear, there are lots of donor advised fund administrators, and I'm going to dive into kind of how they work, but we love National Christian Foundation. They can accept all of these complex gifts. So maybe the Dream Center doesn't want to take on a rental property as a gift. National Christian Foundation can do things like that. So we're not affiliated with them, but our clients really utilize their services a lot. So a lot of value that can be added just through giving appreciated assets before you sell them.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. So the next strategy is bunching. So this is, again, kind of the next level to the next level. This is like 303 level giving here. This is one of our favorite strategies. This is the idea of combining multiple years of giving into one tax year. So a donor advised fund can be a good tool for this, and I'll kind of show you how that works. So imagine this year you've got kind of a high income year in 2023, okay? Your income's a little bit higher and you're wanting to take a tax deduction. You could do a couple years. In this instance, we'd say, hey, generally we give $10,000 a year. Well, we're going to give $20,000 in 2023 so that we can qualify for an itemized tax. Maybe you're deducting your mortgage interest and your state and local taxes. You'd actually qualify for an itemized deduction there. So you'd actually see benefit from a tax perspective with your charitable giving. So you could do 2 years of giving in 2023 and then no giving in 2024. 2 years in 2025 and then skip a year. So you could go every other year. You could go every third year. If there's a big liquidity event, we had a client last year that they sold their business for 8 figures, and they ended up funding 30 years of giving in their biggest tax year. So they had a liquidity event of tens of millions of dollars, and they ended up funding what they wanted to do for the next 30 years of charitable giving. So they got all that deduction in this 1 year where they needed it, and now they get to experience the joy of giving over the long haul. So that's an extreme example of kind of front end loading on bunching, but most traditionally we see every other or every third year. Okay, so the benefits of that would be you get to accelerate your deduction. So you get to pick the year that you want to deduct. You get to avoid gains if you're giving assets. If you're doing asset-based giving, you give an appreciated asset, you get to give it before you realize the gains, no tax on the capital gains. And then you get to spread out the gifts. Okay, so really, really important there. And a great tool for this, again, is a donor advised fund where you can give the gift, let it sit there for 2 years, 3 years, and you can distribute out over time. We'll dive into that a little bit more later. So when should we consider the bunching strategy? If you're giving as a married couple and you're giving $10,000 a year or more, might be worth considering, because then if you bunch, you start getting close to exceeding the standard deduction. So if you're making over $10,000 or you're giving over $10,000 a year as a married couple, could consider bunching so you get some tax benefits. If you have some flexibility in your cash flow, if you have a little bit of margin where you could pay higher tax bills in every other year and have lesser tax bills in the other years, or if you just have the free cash flow to do the larger gift, if you're giving out of cash instead of appreciated assets, making sure you have flexible cash flow, it might be a good consideration for bunching. You also want to make sure the charities you're giving to, if you're not using a donor advised fund and you're going to give them a couple years worth of gifts all at once, make sure they're responsible. And then this is, like I said, a great time to do this. This is in those high earning years. And again, considering that donor advised fund can be a great tool for this.
That's great.
So our fourth strategy and our last strategy, the most tax efficient way that we can give is the qualified charitable distribution. We call these QCDs, okay? So qualified charitable distributions, as I said earlier, it's a select few people. You have to be over age 70 and a half. These gifts can only come out of an IRA. It can't come out of a 401k. It can't come out of a brokerage account. It has to be an IRA, an individual retirement account. Currently, you can give up to $100,000 per person per year via QCD directly to charities. But that's the key. You can't use a donor advised fund here. It has to go directly to charities. So if you're supporting the Phoenix Dream Center and you're over 70 and a half years old and you're wanting to give the most tax efficient way possible, you would want to give via QCD directly out of your IRA to the Phoenix Dream Center. Now, why do we want to do that? There's lots of benefits from a taxable income perspective. So it can actually impact the taxability of your Social Security. So generally, if you're taking money out of your IRA for your own income purposes, you are realizing that as ordinary income. And so it's impacting how much of your Social Security might be taxed. Depending on your income level, there's different percentages of your Social Security that gets taxed. If you send the money out via QCD, it doesn't impact how your Social Security is taxed. So it might actually reduce the amount of your Social Security that's taxed. It also will not, it'll positively impact your Medicare premiums. If you find yourself in a slightly higher bracket on Medicare premiums, giving via QCD would reduce your taxable income, and therefore you might find yourself in a lower Medicare premium bracket. The deductibility of medical expenses, we all know as we age, the cost of care, you end up having health complications. And so the ability to deduct medical expenses is based on how much income you earn. It has to exceed a percentage of your income. So if we're reducing your taxable income, that hurdle to start deducting your medical expenses is actually lower. So you might get to deduct more of your medical expenses. And really cool here, if you're taking required minimum distributions, if you're 73 or older and you're taking those RMDs, you can actually use the qualified charitable distribution to satisfy your RMDs. So you're saying, gosh, I don't need the money out of my IRA, but I'm forced to take it out and pay the taxes. You can send it to the Dream Center and pay no taxes.
Wow.
So let me just share an example on kind of the power of this. So if we were to give cash, not that Joanna's ever given cash, but I'm going to say Joanna gave cash. I'm also going to make the assumption that Joanna is making an exact $100,000 of income, and she has $30,000 of itemized deductions, and $25,000 of that is charitable giving. So she gives $25,000 to the Phoenix Dream Center. Total itemized deductions is $30,000. That means her taxable income for, if you were of that age, which I know you're not, Medicare premiums, Social Security, if you had health expenses itemized, your taxable income would be $70,000. So that number would factor into all of those things.
Okay.
If you were to give via QCD, same $100,000 of income, but instead of taking the IRA distribution, you'd send $25,000 out via QCD. So that's $25,000 you don't show as ordinary income. You would then say, I've made my $25,000 gift, but I don't have enough to itemize anymore. I thought itemizing was what my CPA wanted me to do. Well, you just take the standard deduction. You as a married couple, it's $25,900. Your taxable income is less than $50,000 in this example. That's the power of the QCD instead of taking the money out of the IRA as ordinary income. So a super powerful strategy for folks in that stage of life. So when do you consider QCDs? If you're age 70 and a half or older, absolutely take a look at it. If you have big traditional IRA balances, QCDs are for you. This is if you got RMDs that are higher than you need, QCDs are it. And if you don't need that IRA income, absolutely QCDs are what you should be looking at. So to recap, 4 strategies, they all have their place. I don't want to make the cash givers feel bad. A lot of folks, this is absolutely where you should give because they don't have the assets, they're not at the age of QCDs, they don't have the flexibility and the cash flow for bunching. Give your cash, satisfy that call to give. Appreciated assets are kind of that next level, absolutely phenomenal way to give, and you get 2 tax benefits, avoiding the capital gains and getting the opportunity to itemize your deductions. Bunching is best served with the appreciated assets, but you can do that where you can pick and choose which years you want that big deduction. And then finally, the QCD is the qualified charitable distributions for folks that are in their 70s or beyond, and they have big IRA balances.
Okay. So one of the things that jumped out at me was a lot of my friends in my age group are looking at retiring. And when they retire, they might get a chunk of money from the company they're retiring from all at once. So that's where bunching would really come in handy that year that they retire. That's
Yep, those high income years or year of a liquidity event, absolutely. And that leads me really nicely, good segue, Joanna, into our bonus strategy of the donor advised fund. So in years where maybe you have a heart to give more, or you're going to use the bunching strategy, or you need a place to park the assets that you're going to give, a donor advised fund can be a really fantastic tool for that. So what a donor advised fund is it's a charitable checking account, is a simple way to put that. We like to call these a giving fund. You might hear a DAF or a DAF. They all stand for the same thing. I've referenced National Christian Foundation a couple of times, so I'm going to use them as our example. They're a donor advised fund administrator, and what they are is they are actually a qualified nonprofit. So any dollars that you give to National Christian Foundation into a donor advised fund in your name is actually a charitable gift that you can deduct on your taxes. So they are able to receive cash, all those appreciated assets, those complex gifts that we talked about. They're willing to own shares of privately held businesses or real estate, rental properties, all kinds of things like that. This is a great tool. If you say, man, I give $10,000 a year, but I got a big tax year this year, I want to fund 5 years of my giving, you could give $50,000 into your donor advised fund, get that full deduction in the year of the gift, and then you could give $10,000 a year for the next 5 years. So kind of a neat tool for that, great for bunching if you're a little uncertain about where you're sending the money or that responsibility as a charity. I know Phoenix Dream Center, there's not any concerns there, but that is a really nice advantage of that. So you get to determine the timing of the deduction, you grant out as desired, and you get tax-free growth. Kind of a cool thing is you put the money in, so you put the money in, you avoid the capital gains tax on the asset that you put in, because we're not giving cash, we're going to give assets, right? Always assets if we can. Avoid capital gains, get your deduction. You then get to invest it in there if you'd like, all sorts of investment options. It grows tax-free, and then it gets granted out to the charity tax-free. Really, really fantastic tool. So again, this is not an endorsement or an advertisement for NCF, but they do a fantastic job. ncfgiving.com. If you want to look at donor advised funds, it's easy to set those up, and they're just a wonderful tool. So if I can answer, Joanna, that's what I had prepared. Is there anything else that I can clarify for you?
Yeah, the only thing, several of the donors have talked to me about donor advised funds, and to tell you the truth, Cole, your language that you're speaking, and this is your area of expertise, it almost becomes like a foreign language to people like me. And I've heard about this for several years now, so I can imagine somebody walking into it new. So, and again, we are not saying go out and hire Cole and JMA, but we have worked with them. And I will tell you on a personal level, we did a presentation to JMA a year ago, and their donors, in a matter of about 2 hours that day, gave us over $50,000. And that's to me, that was kind of putting your money where your mouth is, that kind of thing. And so they really are living this. And that's why I trust JMA. National Christian Foundation, I know several of the people over there, they are just phenomenal charitable givers. So these people are walking the walk that we want them to walk. But Cole, if I were to say, okay, I want to do all this stuff, but can I just show you what I have and you just work out the best plan for me? How do I get the biggest bang for my buck? I mean, do I have to think all of this through every year and work with my accountant and all that? I mean, what will JMA do for me as just your normal run-of-the-mill person?
Yeah, so we walk everybody through our initial planning process. We're not going to make recommendations on any part of the financial plan without understanding the entire picture. So we want to make sure we build the foundation of the house, which that's our financial plan, the foundation of the house, and then we have to put together the different rooms at different times. So that could be investment strategy, it could be tax planning, it could be charitable giving. And what's interesting is it's a very open concept house, right? All these things kind of play in together. So we'd want to walk through the initial process first, which that's a 3-meeting process for us. We spend a lot of time getting to know one another because financial numbers don't really matter to us as much as someone's values, what someone is passionate about, what they're fearful about, so we can make sure that we're covering those bases. We want to make sure we really understand what makes that person tick. From that step, we would then build out a plan. We have interactive planning software. It's not unique to us, but we use it really well. I think our advising team is just stellar with the tools that we have. And from that, we have an investment committee. So I showed that slide briefly of our team. About 9 members of our overall team, as well as a couple of consultants, are part of our investment committee. So you don't just get my bright ideas on the giving strategy, the investment strategy, the estate planning, whatever it might be. You get the wisdom of the entire team, including Mr. Moore himself. He's still a part of our investment committee, so that's a huge advantage to us. So what we would want to do is we'd want to put together a comprehensive picture before we'd start doing, little piecemeal projects along the way, because it's so easy to miss a detail if we don't understand the whole picture. So we'd want to walk through the whole process. For us, that doesn't cost anything. We do a fair amount of, pro bono plans for folks that just need a little bit of help. But if it ends up being something where someone becomes a client, then what it looks like for someone like you, Joanna, is we would have semi-annual reviews. Once we get the plan set, we touch base, we meet semi-annually, and we make sure that we are privy to any new developments in someone's life, because things happen, life happens, things change, all sorts of stuff can come up. So what that looks like is constant, ongoing planning so that we can make predetermined decisions for what we see coming next. And that includes coordination with attorneys and CPAs and other professionals so that we can make sure if there is an opportunity for charitable giving, or this time of year, it's charitable giving, it's Roth conversions, it's tax loss harvesting. We're trying to make sure that we're doing all of this wisely with the overall team. Again, it's a comprehensive view, and the charitable giving, I know that's what we focused on today, but we can't make a good charitable strategy without understanding the whole picture.
That's great. So there's a lot of person-to-person interaction. And to me, that's really important, because you can take two different couples or 2 different families may have the same amount of assets and income and all that, but this couple, these are their goals, and this family, these are their goals. And so I love that you listen to people and then you advise them accordingly. That's just beautiful. And I love too that you are faith-based, and you do answer to a higher power, and so you're really out for the very best for everybody and what they can give. And we could ask questions all day long, but we don't want to take up any more of our donors' times. But I just want to let you guys know that Cole Leonida is available to you to talk to you. But the good thing is, although Cole's really, really smart, is you get like 13 more brains along with his.
Praise God for that. You don't want just mine.
All right. Well, Cole, thank you so much for your time and attention, and just your generosity, and just letting us know all this information. And again, if anyone has questions, feel free to reach out to John Moore Associates. You can talk to Cole. You can talk to any of the advisors there, and definitely look up everything that he gave you. And the Christian Foundation, they are amazing. And what was their website again?
It's ncfgiving.com. So they're excellent. Yeah, I can't sing their praises enough. They might as well have a key to our office with as much as they do for us and our clients.
It's a great partnership. Okay, well, you guys have a super blessed day. Thank you so much for considering Phoenix Dream Center and Where Hope Lives for your charitable dollars. And be smart and use wise giving, and use the money you would have paid the government to do your charitable giving if you're so inclined. Have a great day. Thank you so much.